welcome back to Author Chat, or welcome if you've never been here before. I'm super excited today to have with me JLynn Autumn. She's a contemporary romance novelist. Hi, JLynn.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Now, JLynn has out now her fourth book in her Woods Lake series called I Never Stopped Loving You. That just came out in January of 2021. And JLynn, tell us a little bit about that.
So it's book 4 in the Woods Lake series, and the Woods Lake series is a series of connected standalone novels. So really my goal with the series is that you can pick up any one of the couple's stories and read it in any order. And it gives you their complete story from beginning to end with their happily ever after. So book 4 is Joey and Allie, who we see in the first books in the series, but this is the book where you get to, from the day that they meet until their happily ever after epilogue, you get everything right in that book. Joey is he's in the Army Special Forces, so he's home on his break or on his leave when he meets Allie. And most of their story is told through letters, quick trips to see each other. They spend the most of their relationship apart. That's unique in the series. Everyone else is together right from the beginning. And really my purpose with the series is that every book is different and it gives every couple's unique story. Joey and Allie's is the longest of the books and likely will be the longest, even with the remaining couples, because they have 4.5 years before they can actually be together. So you get part 1 where they're apart, they're writing letters, they're visiting when they can. Things aren't really great for them at one point, and they do end up separating, and then they come back together in that part 2, and then we get to see what happily ever after looks like for them. That's their story.
Okay, and you said that there was and then there's some more couples for, there's be more books in your Woods Lake series?
There are. I feel like the series just keeps growing. When it started in October, I thought it was going to be 4 books. It was going to be 4 couples, done. And it has become 8 couples plus a Christmas novella that happened as my book 3. So book 1 told us Marco and Jenna's story. Book 2 gives us Jesse and Lexi. Book 3 is a little bit different. It's not a full-length book. It's a short story for the holiday time where you get to see 4 of our couples. The first 2 from the series, you see Joey and Allie, and you see Shauna, whose book is next, actually meet her person. So that was a fun way to introduce a new character, and then you see everybody together for the holidays.
Okay. What heat level can readers expect from your series?
Anywhere from like 3 to 5, depending on the couple. So Joey and Allie are a little more private. They also don't have as much time together, so they're right around that 3. Middle ground, they have some scenes that are a little bit hotter. My steamiest couple is definitely Shauna and Micah. They are they're really hot right from the start, which was a unique twist for me. It wasn't at all what I intended, but I tend to joke that I write what the voices in my head tell me to, and that they're not really my stories, they're my characters' stories, and they're dictating what happens. I fought part of their story big time, and it just didn't work any other way. I tend to consider myself a 3 to 4 writer with some 2 scenes, and their book is really like 4 and 5. So you kind of get the gamut from me, but for the most part, I sit right about 3 with some 4.
Okay. So overall on your stories, do you consider yourself a plotter or a pantser or somewhere in between?
I'm somewhere in between. Somebody described it really well one time to me when I was doing an author chat with multiple authors, that I'm a weaver. So I kind of I go in with an idea for, okay, this is the couple I'm going to write about. This is what the beginning will look like. Here's where I want their story to end. because none of my stories ever truly end with the end. You don't see those words when I'm done writing because all of my characters are recurring in other books. You get to see them further down the line in someone else's story. So no one's story is ever going to be truly over until the last book is written. And I kind of know, okay, this is where this book's going to end. I don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the middle. And sometimes I get really great ideas for a scene and I'll write it, but I'm like, it doesn't fit here. So then I go back in and I kind of weave something else together over here. So I'm definitely not one of those people who can storyboard out the beginning, the middle, and the end. That does not work for me. I'm kind of a fly by the seat of my pants writer. Like, okay, I have an hour. I don't have time for that scene, but I can totally write this scene right now.
Sometimes they just come to you in the order they come to you. It doesn't, there's no need to be, there's some people who are linear writers, and then there are some of us who are like, can just see a scene that's like, okay, but that's a later scene. But I think you still have to write it when it comes to you.
Yeah, I'm huge. Like if the scene comes to you, then you need to write it. And that happened to me when I was finishing book 1. I got this really great idea for a scene for Jesse in book 2. I opened up a new document and I wrote out that scene. So there's a scene in the middle of Jesse's book, and I wrote it halfway through book 1. I wasn't anywhere close to starting book 2, but that scene kicked it off.
That's great. How has your process changed over writing the 4 books?
They take me longer. I spend a lot more time on really thinking about, here's my beginning, here's my end, and a little bit of what I want to get done when I sit down to write it. When I wrote book 1, Marco and Jenna's story, I was actually in the process of final edits for a standalone. And I wasn't sleeping a lot because of a lot of stuff that was going on just within my own life. I've been really open about the fact that I've been secretly writing for almost 20 years. And I have all these stories that are half started, but I wasn't going to actually do anything with them. And one of my best friends in the world, he's been my best friend since I was 14 and he was 16. He was always like, do it. You always do what's expected. Do it. It's unexpected. It's not at all like you. You always follow like, this is what I should do. This is the guaranteed paycheck. This is the secure plan. And so for 25 years, he's telling me like, just do it. You want to do it, do it. He passed away unexpectedly in May. And I had promised him that I would at least publish 1 book. So I picked up the book that was the most done and I finished it. And I kind of told myself that I was finishing this because I had always promised him that I would. And I'm in final edits for that. I'm not sleeping really well because I'm grieving. I'm also working, and it's just, COVID's a mess. Everything's still bananas. I live in California. We have a ton of restrictions still on what we can and can't do. And I was sitting up one night, it's like 4 a.m. I haven't slept yet. And I have this idea in my head and this voice gets really chatty. And I was just like, I opened up a new document and I wrote it out. I drafted book 1 in my series in a weekend.
Wow.
That's unheard of. I could never do that again. I don't want to do that again because it was the messiest rough draft I've ever seen. But it was really good for me to do, was to just sit down and not fight the voice in my head and really learn to just listen to what my characters want. Book 2 took me more time. Book 4, Joey and Allie's story that just came out, that one took me the most time. I started it in October and I finished it like last week on Monday. I was finally at the point where I could say, okay, it's good enough and I can be done. It went through multiple people looking at it for editing. Definitely my editing process has changed completely. You learn a lot when you decide I'm going to self-publish a book. You learn that there's a whole gamut of what different types of editing look like. And you learn the importance of letting people see those work in progresses before they're perfect. They don't need to be perfect before you let someone read them. That was really, really hard for me because until I published my first book, only one person had ever seen what I wrote. And I just was like, no, it's not perfect. No one can see it because it's not perfect. And I really had to let go of that. And so with Joey and Allie's story, I let go of that. And I let author friends that I've known for years and new ones that I've met see bits and pieces like, hey, this scene isn't working. And I would read something that they've written and we exchange that back and forth. And okay, like, oh, I love this, but yeah, I see where you're struggling. So letting people see works in progress was huge for me. And I'm really glad that I did it because Joey and Allie's story, I think, is so much better because I finally let go of control.
Those little things that you're so afraid of letting someone read your stuff at the start, and it can really be helpful. And I mean, at some point, if you want to publish a book, other people have to read your stuff.
Right. Yeah, you have to let people see it, and it's hard.
It is.
It's that vulnerability. And because I was like, I've been writing for years. I write research articles and I write very like scientific-y stuff about language development. And my background in my real life is speech language pathology. Like I write very clinically based. Clinically based writing is not creative writing. It's not contemporary romance. It's a completely different style of writing. And you have to learn that style.
Right. And it's a lot less, a lot less feels like there's a piece of you out in the world once you put that out because it's research based and clinical. So definitely a different muscle from writing creatively. So obviously you have a day job and you have a family. What does your typical writing day look like? How do you fit this into to everything?
So up until May, I worked for one of our local school districts as a speech language pathologist. And then because of COVID, I had made a decision that we didn't know what school was going to look like in the fall. The majority of the schools in California are still closed and are doing distance learning. I have an 8-year-old daughter. We're lucky that we have grandparents that live in town and another set that live an hour and a half. And then we have some that live 3 hours from us. So we have support, but we didn't necessarily have a day-to-day school support. So we made the decision that I was not going to return to the district, taking at least one school year off, kind of see what happens. I do special education advocacy work. It's my passion. I love it. So I am very fortunate that my schedule is I'm home all the time. So if I'm not helping clients with advocacy work right now, or if I'm not doing an assistive technology consult or something like that, then I have free time when my daughter is in school to write. So there's days that I can write for 4 or 5 hours, and then there's other days that I can write for an hour. So I kind of just have my laptop at like my comfy writing spot. And when I have time, or even if I don't have time, if I don't feel like it, or I don't feel like I have a good story to jot down, I'll leave the computer closed. But if I have an idea and I have the time, I'll pick it up and I'll write. And there's times that I sit at night for like 4 hours straight and I write. And then there's 2 or 3 days that will go by and I wouldn't have written anything.
Whatever works for you. What are your favorite tropes to write, and are they different from the ones that you like to read?
I write this and I read this. There's very little crossover, mostly because as a writer, I want to know that the story that I'm telling is uniquely mine, and it's not me recreating something that I've seen that I think might work. Like, oh, I think this is what a small town romance should look like because I've seen it 100 times in 100 books that I've read. I really want my stories to be mine and my characters. I'm not a big small town romance reader. I never have been. So it was interesting to make this decision to write a small town series. But I've mostly lived in small towns growing up. So I think that kind of contributed. I write in a way what I know. So as a writer, I tend to write the small town romance, friends and within that, Friends to Lovers. And then my first book was an office place romance. So that tends to be what I do as a writer. But as a reader, like, I love the dark reads. I love the mafia. I love the motorcycle club reads. Give me a really well-written BDSM book and I'm happy. That's not my talent to write. I don't ever see myself writing a BDSM or a mafia or a motorcycle club book, but I love to read them. I love like a good romantic thriller, but again, it's not my talent as a writer. So I'm very much, I write this and I read this.
What's your least favorite romance trope that's out there? Now, I'm going to caveat that with just whatever she says does not make, if you like that, continue to like it. That's totally cool. We're all different. It's an opinion.
Yeah,
so
really.
Please don't send me angry messages over this.
I apologize because it's really popular right now, but secret baby and like that's not my thing. Anything with like a heavy element of cheating, I really struggle with, but that's because of a past relationship and having been the one who found out about it later. Like it's tough to then see it in a fiction form because to me it's not fiction; it really is real life.
Right.
So I avoid the cheating books. Like a small element where like maybe something had happened in the past, but if it's the primary thing within the story, I tend to skip that. And then like the secret baby or like I'm going to get pregnant, so then he'll marry me. Just not my jam. I used to really like those books. So it's not at all that I think that they're awful or anything like that. I think some of them are really well written and they're great books, but they're just not my thing anymore.
Oh, we all move on and taste change. So that's perfectly good. For your own books, what was the hardest scene for you to write?
Oh, wow.
Do you have one?
Within Joey and Allie's book, it was really hard to write the breakup. Because I had it in my head from the first page of book one that Joey's home on 1 week leave over the summer and they've already broken up at that point and it's in book one. So by the time I get to book 4, even though I don't want them to break up and I just want to write their happy ending, I'm tied to it because there's 3 books that are written where they were apart and now they're back together. I have to do it. Writing a breakup is always really hard. Writing a breakup with 2 people who are obviously meant for each other is really, really difficult. So making that decision and trying to decide how to do it in a way that people would understand that eventually they are going to get back together. And from book 1 that they do end up back together. So trying to figure out how does this look and what exactly happened. And when the scene came and it was Allie's voice, very much like, this is what happens. I was like, no, like, we're not doing this. This is not happening. And then I fought it and I fought it. I fought it for weeks. And I kind of took the chapter and I'm like, okay, I just called the chapter breakup and I walked away from it. And I went to, okay, I'm going to go to part 2 now. I'm going to give you your happily ever after. I'll come back. And I wrote the breakup last. And I gave it to a friend and said, I need you to read this. And she's like, it's awful, but it needs to happen. And like, go with it. Like, if this is their story, like, you have to let them tell it. So for me, really, like, Allie and Joey's breakup was the hardest.
So do you read your reviews?
I do. I read my reviews. I do not read them over and over and over again. I'll read a review when it comes in, like the first weekend or the first few days that a book's out. I'll look to see what's coming in, especially if like all of a sudden you might see like, oh, that's awful because there's a formatting issue with the ebook. I didn't know because when I did it, it looked fine. I'll go in and fix something. Like, just let me know.
Yeah.
For the most part, I have like there was an issue with one of my books. Like someone's like, hey, there's a formatting issue that was sent to me privately before a review went out for it. And I really appreciated that. And it was something that I immediately said, thank you so much for letting me know. Like, hey, chapter this on this page, like something's off. Like, I don't know what's missing. Something's missing. I went in and I fixed it. But I look at the reviews. I don't check every single day for new reviews.
What's your advice for dealing with negative reviews?
So I actually just talked to 2 author friends this morning because one got a 1-star review on a book that's not even published yet, and one got a 3-star review on a book that's not even published yet. And it was one of those that I'm like, really? Like, I didn't realize that books could even be like, this is how new I am to the world, that like you can actually review the books before they're even published. And it's really one of those things where it's okay to get a review and to say, like, I don't feel like this review is accurate. And it's okay to think, I don't think that this one's right. And if you have 10 reviews and only one's negative, that's okay. I have one person who wrote to me and she's like, I think it's just like your writing's not for me. And I'm like, that's okay. You don't, like, not every writer has to be for you.
Right.
There's a million books out there and there's thousands of writers. And I'm a huge believer in everybody can find a book genre or an author that they can learn to like or that they'll fall in love with. I'm married to someone who we've been together now for 9 years, married for 8, and he 100%, I'm not a reader. I don't read. I don't like to read. It's just not my thing. And to me, I'm like, what does not a reader mean? We found an author that he loves and that he wants every single book from. Not only does he want to read all the books, he wants to own all the books. So I'm a huge believer that if someone who's 100% not a reader can find someone, that everyone can, and it's okay if I'm not your author. I'm totally fine with that.
What would you say is your top advice for a first-time author or writer sitting down to write a book? What would you say? What kind of advice would you give them?
Write it down because you can always edit it out. And as much as you fight a scene, it might not be that that scene belongs to that book. It doesn't mean that it's not usable. It might just mean that it doesn't belong to that book. So if you have the idea, write it down because you can always use it later, or you can decide later it doesn't belong in this book. So I'll take, 15 chapters and I might cut a complete chapter. I don't throw it away, like save it because you can use it for later.
That's a good idea. So overall, what does success look like for you?
I felt with my first book that I would consider it a success if somebody bought it who wasn't related to me or didn't know me in real life. So for my first book, that was my success, is that somebody bought my book who didn't know me in real life. And then my goal for every book following that is to sell more copies than what I sold of the previous one. And that to me is success.
That's a good benchmark. What is up next for you? What can readers expect next?
So Wood Lake has just boomed. It was supposed to be Marco and Jenna, Jesse and Lexi, Joey and Allie, and then Shauna and whoever she ended up with. Because I went in knowing she was going to get a happily ever after, but had no idea who it was going to be with because I knew it wasn't going to be with any of the characters that were already in book 1. Okay. It's now going to be 9 books, but I know I need a break from Woods Lake. So I'm one of those people that I have a couple of books already going before I publish something. So we have Shauna and Micah's story coming next, and that's going to be at the end of February. And they are hot and steamy from the very beginning. In March, I have a short story that I'm going to publish. It's either going to be on Amazon through Kindle Unlimited and then be perma-free, like just permanently free, just this little short story, because I don't feel like it's long enough to be a full book. but it is a complete story. So it's just like a little passion project, totally different than what I have written. And that'll wrap up March. And I'm working on book 6 in Woods Lake. And I am being the really mean author that I'm not telling you who the characters are for book 6. I think when people read book 4, it's going to be really obvious who the book 6 couple is. So I don't want to tell anyone who book 6 is until book 4 has been out for a little bit, because they are minor characters that are introduced. So we haven't really seen much, if anything, from them other than a quick passing. And after book 6 for Woods Lake, I'm going to take some time away from Woods Lake and jump back to that first book that I wrote, Game Changer. It was originally going to be a standalone. And I said all along, it's a standalone contemporary office romance. Done. That story's done. I'm a huge fan of happily ever epilogues. So I wrote their epilogue, and then there's 2 other couples that are in the book. I gave them each bonus epilogues. So you got their happily ever after. I thought I went like this and I walked away. Within a month of Game Changer being out, I had 15 emails asking me for when Mark and Linda's story was coming.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, I'm not planning on writing Mark and Linda's story. But when in a month you have 15 people asking you, can you please write their story? Can you please write their story? I thought about it and I was like, you know what? Like, let's write their story. So I'm going to go back and write Mark and Linda's story. And I have another standalone story that will probably be more of the new adult genre versus contemporary adult. Not 100% sure where that's going to go. And that one's called Stars and Dreams. So I already have a name for it, but I don't know anything else about it yet, release date or anything like that. And then the other thing that I had started was a long time ago, I took this even smaller town than Woods Lake, and I wrote a very short Christmas story. And it was called Christmas in Camden. And I'm going to take that and develop it into a full-length book and give you an even smaller town than Woods Lake and take you to cattle country and do like a ranch style small town. And that's going to be the Christmas book. So I can tell you that I have a Christmas book in 2021. It'll be out at the end of November, and that's going to kick off a whole brand new series. And eventually I will come back and I will give you Woods Lake 7, 8, and 9. And then I'm going to tie a ribbon on Woods Lake, and that one will be
done. Or so you think. So we'll see.
So I think, but you never know, because it was supposed to only be 4 books, and now it's 9. Right now, that's kind of my plan is book 4 is already out, 5's coming. You'll get book 6 sometime before the summer. I don't have an exact date yet. And then you have a standalone, and you'll get Mark and Linda's story before any other Woods Lake books come.
That's great. Okay, guys, she has a lot planned for you. So, JLynn, would you tell the readers where they can find you and keep up with your release schedule?
So I have an author Facebook page. It's author JLynn Autumn on Facebook. So it's super easy because I use author JLynn Autumn for everything. I'm on Instagram under that. And then I also have a fan chat group called Jabbering with JLynn. And that's linked on the Facebook page, and super easy to find. That's where I put all of like my sneak peeks are all in that group. And I will sometimes put them on the author public Facebook page, but for the most part, the sneak peeks stay in that group.
Okay.
And what I love about that group too is other author friends will pop in and let us know about new releases and stuff.
And I will have all of JLynn's links down in the description below, so you guys can check that out. And while you're down there, hit the like button and leave us a comment, and we will appreciate that. And JLynn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for your time. It was so much fun.
Yeah. You guys don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next week.